There's a lot of discourse on booktube about sort of superficial reading and TikTokification of reading goals. If it's superficial, to only read the hottest of the hot latest releases, or to feel a sense of acquisitional reading where you need to, tick off as many bucket list books as possible in order to buffer your reading stats or whatever. There's an underlying question there, which is, what does it mean to be a serious reader? How can we sort of interrogate ourselves to ask whether we are serious or whether we are being imbibed with shallowness in our reading habits and practices? And there's various ways that you could probably reflect on your own reading life and sort of question the impact of commodification and consumerist impulses in your reading. But I'm just going to look at one particular way that I think is quite useful for me, and maybe it works for you too. Let me know down below in the comments if you have other ideas about how to sort of scrutinize one's own reading habits. But my test that I want to offer today is the question of rereading. Many writers have talked with a lot of eloquence about the importance of rereading. Vladimir Nabokov, for example, said that serious readers are rereaders. If you don't reread, you can't consider yourself a serious reader. Now, I'm not here to make that claim, but I think it's an interesting litmus test, because with this pressure to read the next hot thing that's just, flown off the press, there is a drive forwards to always the new shiny book. Also with all the classics, ticking off the biggest hits, as it were, and just quickly sort of moving on to the next thing. And I think if we really are honest with ourselves as lovers of literature, of course, it's a massive thrill in cracking open a new book that you haven't encountered before and diving into the pages with an open mind and an open heart to encounter a new perspective, fresh characters. It's one of the greatest joys of the reading life. So there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But there's also a very deep pleasure and valuable reward in returning to books that have impacted us, or books that we have a high opinion of but haven't read in a long time. Beloved childhood books as well, to go back and reread and feel the inflections of responding to that interface of a work of literature from the standpoint, the vantage point of now, of who you are today in comparison with who you were 10 or 15 years ago. But it is not the same feeling as going on to the latest hot new release, or that book from your bucket list that you haven't got to. But if you really want to be conversant or fluent in a particular epoch, in a particular writer's body of work, or a particular literary movement, you can't really be expert in one of those aspects of the literary tradition without actually doing another pass through on those great books. And I believe that books that you really love, that become a sort of part of your your inner landscape of who you are, cherished friends, some of these characters and ideas that were paradigm shifting for you as an individual, you're gonna, I speak for myself, that I would want to return to them many, many times. So if that isn't a value that you hold in high regard, then it's an interesting question to actually go back and look at your reading habits and actually count up how many books have you reread? How many books do you reread per year? And if you aspire to reread and return to beloved books, to be able to argue or analyze on a deep level with acumen, with authority, but you're not actually putting into practice that value by actually going back and rereading books, then maybe that is an indication that you are being too heavily swayed by this grasping, yearning desire to get to the greatest hits or the latest new releases. This is not a video about judgment for or against anyone's reading habits, but I just think it's a very interesting question to ask and to pose to oneself, and to actually then go back and look, how many books have you reread? So that's what I'm actually just going to go through my own reading stats. About 10 or 12 years ago, I actually started recording my personal canon in this file, all of the books that I read, starting from the beginning of 2015 until today. Of course, I read many books before that, but the sort of systematized approach to building a personal canon and developing, like I said, a fluency and an acumen in letters is something that I've been consciously doing since 2015. And I know that my numbers don't live up to the value of rereading. Now, I'm going to give myself a bit of grace in the first couple of years, because I think when I really started reading systematically and with massive relish and endeavor, that was a time, an exploratory time for me of discovering many great writers and works of literature that would have a huge impact on my formative self and my sort of inchoate chops as a writer. But I would say at least by 2017, 18, I should be starting to include rereading in my practice, and especially of then going back and rereading childhood classics, so sort of pre-2010 books. Not that I was a child in 2010, I was already a young adult, but you know what I mean, sort of reaching back and retrieving affective experience and entering again into the world of those books, encountering them with fresh eyes and layers of human experience and reading experience as well. So in 2015, I reread 0 books. Okay, I said I would give myself a bit of grace there. Oh, I should say, by the way, that I have a sort of minimal goal to reread at least 10 books a year. At this point in time, that is my goal. I think it was maybe an unspoken goal in the last 5 or 6 years, but now it's really articulated to myself. Minimum of 10, can be more than that. Hopefully it is more than that, but at least 10 as the kind of base level of rereading to keep myself in check with that value of good, scholarly and literary practice, but that I do honestly sometimes struggle with when there are so many books that I still want to read in this brief lifetime that I have and that we all have at our fingertips. So 10, okay. In 2016, I reread 1 book. What was that actually, by the way? In 2016, I reread Animal Farm by George Orwell. 2017, I reread 0 books. Now, from 2018, I think I really should start to see an increase in rereading, but I know that I haven't always held myself to that standard. 2018, I reread 4 books. 2019, I reread 6 books, including Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, I see here. In 2020, I reread 5 books. By that stage, I should have been doing a bit better than 5, including Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Those were all rereads. The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. 2021, I reread 6 again. It's interesting. I haven't really, looked back in this way, and I think that is an indication that I need to make a more conscious focus on rereading. That I should be hitting that minimum of 10. This year, I'm doing pretty well, so we're going to get to that in a second. So 2021, I reread 6 books. So, for example, To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. In 2022, I reread 7. So, yeah. I reread A Mercy by Toni Morrison. I reread Waiting for Godot. I reread Mrs. Dalloway, among others. In 2023, I reread 6, including The Duchess of Malfi by John Webster. The Duchess of Malfi, I said that a bit weird. The Duchess of Malfi by John Webster. In 2024, I reread 8 books, including A House of Pomegranates by Oscar Wilde, including Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and some of Clarice Lispector's short stories. And then this year, so far in 2025, I have reread 9 books. So it looks like we're on target to hit that sort of minimum goal. I would like to do a lot more than that. And I most recently reread Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas. Rereading is beautiful, though. It really is. I think it's always humbling to see how much one forgets. You come back and you're like, wow, that scene was full of pathos and I didn't it just kind of went over my head at the time, or yeah, you notice different aspects or elements, and you make, I think, different links in the firmament, in the constellation of your own reading life. You also want to have, there probably are a few people in the world that have photographic memory that can sort of, recall with absolute clarity, huge swathes of printed text. But that's really the exception. Most human beings have a fallible memory that, sort of gets rubbed away with time. And so by returning to works that you value, you sort of bolster your connection with those works and the lessons you've learned, and you can really draw them into your bloodstream, into the very marrow and heartbeat of your daily life, so that they become, a part of yourself. That's a very beautiful thing, but also that you can then, articulate your ideas better. You can draw upon, your experiences in reading life in ways that impact your breathing, waking, human existence, as well as deepen your reading of the works that you encounter. So let me know what you guys think about this. Do you track your reading? Do you track your rereading? Do you value rereading? Yeah. What do you think about this question of rereading as a test of, how seriously we take the values that we hold dear, and being a thorough and intensive and serious reader? And how do we thwart that sort of external urge to be a consumer of books and quickly move on to the next sort of fast fashion latest release? Thank you for watching, and speak to you all soon.